The Panoz Esperante GTR-1, a wicked 90s icon. This car was quite striking looking. Some even refer to it as the Batmobile, and I'll tell you why later. But this car was great. This was developed by Panoz Auto Development and Radar Motorsport in 1996 for the 1997 FIA GT1 class championship. The Panoz Esperante GTR-1 was, if you notice, not at all related to the road-going Panoz Esperante, which was an actual different car. The shared name was later actually dropped, and this car is usually known as just the Panoz GTR-1. Although they did have two road-legal GTR-1s, of course, they had to do that to meet homologation requirements set by FIA GT. Usually all these Le Mans cars do have to have at least a few road-going examples. The GTR-1, as I mentioned, competed in the FIA GT Championship in the late 90s. It did 24 hours of Le Mans in Europe as well, IMSA GT, United States Road Racing Championship, and the ALMS or American Le Mans Series in North America. The Esperante GTR-1 was unique in the GT1 class, as this was dominated by European cars and more specifically long rear-engine cars. The GTR-1 was sleek, low, wide, but it was actually front mid-engine. So it was in the front ahead of the driver, but it was behind the front axle, so to say. So it was still a front mid-engine, and this gave the car a balanced layout and quite odd proportions with a very long nose and a cockpit placed far back into the body. This is, as I mentioned before, why it was called the Batmobile. As you heard earlier, and if you ever get to hear one, the engine note is quite spectacular in this car, as is most GT1 cars from any era. But this car used a 6-liter V8, a Ford V8, which Panoz turned to Roush Racing of NASCAR to construct for them. So this was essentially a NASCAR-esque 6-liter V8, hence the similarity in exhaust sounds if you hear them. Sounds very dominant, very loud and echoey. This car even had a hybrid version back in 1998, in which Panoz reached an agreement with the English firm Zytec to develop a hybrid electric motor. The Q9 GTR-1 hybrid, nicknamed Sparky, car received a unique purple paint job with large yellow lightning bolts. The idea was that the car would be able to gain better fuel mileage with the help of an electric motor that would help drive the rear wheels during acceleration, thus requiring less power and less load on the gasoline engine and therefore consuming less fuel. Of course, this car would need batteries to power the electric motor, and to recharge batteries, it would have a, regenerative braking system, although this car would weigh more as a result. Though it was a cool idea for the time and pretty cool trivia that there was a hybrid Panoz Esperante GTR-1, this car was not as successful as a regular counterpart. By the way, total being 6 GTR-1s. Yes, there were 6 GTR-1s, the actual race cars, and 2 road-going versions. The long, rich racing history of this car. The car had an up and down career over in Europe, overseas, but was pretty dominant on American soil. The car was eventually retired pretty quickly in late 1999, although it did return for a final outing in 2003, where chassis number 003, formerly run by David Price Racing, was ran in a closed cockpit Le Mans prototype series before the company switched to their newer Esperante GT-LM GT2 car. Though on this final run, the car did not finish the race due to electronic problems. Although having a relatively short lifespan in racing compared to other companies and other famous cars, and maybe not a total dominance like some other cars in certain eras, this car did come up with way less funding and way less credibility than established companies nearing 100 years old at this point. This car came into the scene and did really well and made an impact to the point where people still remember this car to this day. This car was popular in mass media as well, appearing in multiple video games. Personally, for me, I remember this car vividly in the late 90s PC game called Midtown Madness. Midtown Madness took place in Chicago and was an awesome free roam game with circuit races, time trials, and this car was the so-called end of the game car that you had to work your ass off to unlock. This car was also in Gran Turismo, some of the early entries, if you remember. This car is still at multiple heritage and retro racing events around the globe. Panoz was a cool car company which made a lot of unique cars over the years, but this one certainly was special and had a awesome look, an awesome sound, and well, that's about it for the Panoz Esperante GTR-1. Do you remember this car? Did you get to see it race in person, or did you get to take the wheel of this thing virtually in some old retro video games? This car has gone viral. Out.